The most recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change makes for very sobering reading. Tucked away there is a graph that shows us that if we are to keep below 2 degrees warming, as scientists tell us we must in order to tackle the worst of climate change, then that means that we need emission cuts globally of between 50 and 85% by 2050. Now that is an enormous challenge, and that's what makes the meeting in Bali so important. It is an important challenge, but it's also a perfectly possible challenge. In other words, climate change is primarily not a technical challenge, not an economic challenge, not a scientific challenge, but a challenge of political will. The key question is really whether we will be able to muster sufficient public momentum and political will to tackle climate change fast enough, or whether we'll go down in history as the only species that spent all its time monitoring its own extinction rather than taking active steps to avoid it. For me, the crucial thing from Bali is that any international agreement must be based on the principle of equity, on the principle of fairness. That means that it needs to be based on a formula like contraction and convergence, which recognizes that since the richer countries are overwhelmingly responsible for climate change, then we have the most to do in order to tackle it. This week, the high-level segment in Bali is taking place. It's extremely regrettable to hear that the United States is dragging its feet so much. It is refusing to accept binding targets so far. There is, of course, a debate within the United States. It's crucial that people get behind the position of Al Gore that is absolutely about saying that we must have binding targets, because that is what will give out the sign to the rest of the world, and the developing world in particular, that the richer countries are prepared to recognize that they are overwhelmingly responsible for climate change. They are prepared to recognize that they will have to do the most to tackle it, and that they will put in place an agreement that enables and supports and helps developing countries to do what they need to do as well.